Hello, welcome to Emerging Form. I'm Christy Ashwanden.
And I'm Rosemary Watola-Tromer, and this is a show on creative process. Hey there, Christy.
Hi, Rosemary. How's it going?
It's going good. So, what have you been thinking about lately with your book proposal workshop? I know you have one going on right now.
Oh yeah, I do. Well, we're sort of in the middle third of the workshop right now, which is when people are sort of taking their big ideas and a lot of reportage and stuff and trying to figure out how do I fit this into a book? And like, how do I, it's interesting because people kind of think, oh, a book is big and I can put everything in, but that's actually not a good book. Like, you don't want the book to be an
Too
encyclopedia,
much.
right? And it really needs to be one subset of that thing. Like, what is the story you're telling about this subject? Or, who are the characters? What is the narrative arc? And that can be a really fun process. It can also be really challenging. And I think that's something that I think is one of the most interesting, important, and challenging parts of writing a book.
Yeah, it's just getting to the heart. What's at stake? Why is this story
Yeah.
important? What is this story? Yeah, it's
Yeah.
really
Yeah. I'm
hard.
really, really excited to talk to our guest today about this because I know it's something she thought very hard and long about too.
And today's guest is Roxanne Khamsi. Roxanne is the author of Beyond Inheritance, Our Ever Mutating Cells, and A New Understanding of Health. Roxanne's also a contributing writer at The Atlantic. Her articles on genetics have appeared in a wide range of publications, including The New York Times, Scientific American, Nature magazine, and Wired. Roxanne served as chief news editor for the international research journal Nature Medicine for more than a decade, and she's based in Montreal. Let's bring her on.
Welcome to Emerging Form, Roxanne.
Thank you so much for having me. I love this program. I love
Oh.
being part of this conversation. So thank you.
We're so glad to have you here. And I'd love to jump in with just having you tell us a little bit about, if you could say in a sentence or two, what is Beyond Inheritance, Our Ever Mutating Cells, and A New Understanding of Health about?
Right. So why did I spend 3 years writing this book about DNA? What inspired me to do that? So I have been writing about genetics for 20 years and
Mhm.
speaking with a lot of families, especially about like rare disease, people that seem to have unusual instances where their DNA mutated. But about
Mhm.
8 years ago, I found out that like actually our all of us have DNA that's mutating all of the time. And
Mhm.
so Beyond Inheritance is about how each of us is this ecosystem of DNA that's constantly mutating, or ecosystem of cells with DNA that's constantly mutating, and like exploring what does that mean for our health? How does that influence all the diseases that we know about? So that's it
Yeah.
in a nutshell. I could say more.
I think this is so fascinating, and one of the things that I love about it is it's taking something that I think a lot of people think, "Yep, we've got this all figured out. Yep, DNA, we know what it is," and, I came of age during the Human Genome Project, right? And it was gonna,
Me too.
we were gonna know everything then, like we have it all figured
Yep.
out, and of course, humility comes next, where you realize, "Oh, right, everything you learn just shows you how much you still don't know." So I think this is just a fascinating topic, and I think there's a lot of interesting, surprising science in here. But I'm curious, from your perspective, you've been reporting on this stuff for a long time. At what point did you realize, "Oh, crap, this is a book," or, "Oh, I wanna write this, as a book?" Like, when did that become apparent to you, and how did that sort of play out?
I've really always been fascinated with how our DNA influences like who we are, like our life
Mhm.
experiences,
Yeah.
like the diseases we get. And especially the book has like a lot of medical mysteries in it because we're at
Mhm.
this interesting point. It's interesting that you mentioned the Human Genome Project, but right, because
Yeah.
that was more than 20 years ago and they were like, "Oh, we figured it out." And
Yeah.
we've been waiting for kind of it to guide us a little better. But I think part of the reason it's been so hard to guide us is there's all this variability. So the question about like when did I figure out it was like this was a book was um I came across a paper that explained or it was in the New England Journal of Medicine. It showed
Mhm.
this link, this extremely strong link between the presence of mutant blood cells and like people over the age of 70, like about 10 to 20% of them have like a threshold level of these mutant blood cells. So it's not like a rare thing. It's like 1 in 10
Mhm.
or 1 1 in 5. And you and I, all of us, or you guys and me, we probably have like 1 or 2 of these mutant cells in our system at least. But this was linked to something that wasn't cancer. Like they were getting mutations later in life that weren't causing cancer, they were causing cardiovascular disease. And at that point, I was like, oh, I think this might be a book, because here I am talking to people that are, in the rare disease community, but like we're all kind of mutants. And isn't that really interesting? And so I
Yeah.
did some PubMed searches and I saw it's not just heart disease where we acquire mutations, it's everything. It's like Alzheimer's disease, it's epilepsy, like all of these things can be caused by spontaneous mutations.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I'm curious, I teach this book proposal workshop, and one of the
A great
hardest things I
workshop that
think
I've heard so many
oh,
things about, I should
thanks.
add.
Yeah, yeah. We have one going on right now, and it's, one of the things that people struggle the most with is kind of honing their argument and sort of honing, like, what is this book? Like, a book can't just be a topic, right? And it's not an encyclopedia of the
Yeah.
subject of DNA, right? How did you find that thread, and how did you sort of find, I don't know, it feels like this book does sort of have an argument, but how did you find that through thread, and how did you find kind of a narrative arc to frame the book on?
So I think you'll find this interesting because it was something that changed from the proposal to the final book. And
Mm.
it was one of those reasons,
Mhm.
and you've met my
Yeah.
editor, Courtney, who's
Yeah.
fantastic. And she kind of
She's
helped
great.
me. She's fantastic. And so she helped me understand. So the way I proposed it, because I had this one idea, the way I explained it, right? Like we have got to break this preconception that our DNA is static in all our cells. It's changing. That was a kind of an easy
Mm.
thesis statement, right? Or main
Yeah,
argument of the book. And also kind of all the health implications that like follow from that,
right.
which are profound. And like, even after I've put the book out, like there's just more and more examples of it. So,
Mhm.
and also I should say, no one had written a book about how we mutate after we're conceived, right?
Yeah.
Like nobody had written of this. So I felt like I was safe is probably not a great word to use, but just like I had a niche already. But then
Yeah,
there's the
no
question
one's
of
gonna scoop
narrative,
you.
right? Because all of
Yeah.
us have read science books that are just kind of like case reports after, and there's a space for that kind of book, right? But
Yeah.
this didn't seem like the right topic for that. So the
Yeah.
way I had organized my proposal was to kind of walk through the body, like organ system by organ system, like, oh, these are the
Mhm.
spontaneous mutations that can affect the liver. These are the
Mhm.
spontaneous mutations that can affect the brain. And da da da. And then Courtney was like, this doesn't really feel like it's building. Like there doesn't seem to
Yeah.
be movement forward. And then I had to go back, and that was like the part where I was like, oh, I didn't realize, but writing a book is just as much about thinking as it is about writing.
Oh my
Oh,
god,
yeah.
I wanna write that on a sticky note and just put it like, truth, truth.
Yeah.
It's funny, I've always kind of felt like writing's easy, it's the thinking that's hard,
Yeah.
right? And the reason when you're sitting there looking at the blinking cursor and it's not going, it's because I haven't figured it out yet, and that's
Lots
why,
of
you
walking.
know yeah, oh yeah, my husband will say, "I thought you were writing, why are you going for a run?" And it's like, "Yeah, because I need to figure it out," you know?
Yeah. It's funny, like so I came up with the title and the subtitle for my book. And part of the reason I could do that is that I had this 2 hours of driving,
Uh-huh.
that had like for a year I had to drive my son to daycare, and it was like half an hour there and half an hour back twice a day.
Uh-huh.
And so
Right.
at every stoplight I was like, okay, what am I gonna call this book? Like it was just thinking time. Do you know what I mean?
Oh,
So
yeah. Yeah, yeah.
so to go back to the proposal, or to how it changed from the proposal to
Yeah.
the organization of the book now. And I should also say, like, I didn't do the art, so this is like the title and the
Oh, but it's
The
subheading.
cover is
beautiful.
gorgeous.
It is so
Thank you.
gorgeous.
I
We
made
need to
sure
Yeah.
it was like
describe
I've got the cover right here. Yeah,
I made
it's
sure it was
quite
right
can
handed
you describe it?
DNA.
yeah.
Can I describe the cover? Oh, sure, of course,
Yeah,
because people
just for
can't see it.
people who are listening.
So the cover is it's black with white lettering that says "Beyond Inheritance: Our Ever Mutating Cells and a New Understanding of Health." And then on the side there's DNA, and there's 5 colors of DNA circles, which I also was talking to them. I was like, should it be 4? Because
Yeah, right.
there's ACTG, and there's only 4 nucleotides, but
Right.
we settled on a little bit of creative license. And there's kind of circles kind of shooting off the DNA helix to kind of just evoke the idea that it's a dynamic thing. Things are
Yeah,
changing.
dynamic system.
So to go to this, how did it go from like organ by organ to what it is now, where the structure now, it kind of it does a thing where it starts kind of where we're at now and then jumps back and tells a little bit of the backstory and builds from there.
Mhm.
So it's a little bit of a flashback. And I kind of built it around the story of discovery of this idea, right? Like,
Uh-huh.
I built it around how did we even discover that our
Yeah.
DNA changes with time? So that's,
Mhm.
or that each of us individually is this hotbed of mutation
Yeah.
and that it
Yeah.
affects all these sorts of diseases. So
Uh-huh.
it became a mystery read in terms of the cases, like all these individual people that had these diseases that the doctors couldn't figure out and that they ultimately saw were the result of like a mutation that had happened either early in their embryonic development or even later in life. But then it's also kind of in tandem with that, like the scientists at first it's like the cancer biologists that figure this out, then it's the immunologists, then it's the blood doctors, and then it's everybody,
Yeah.
you know?
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, those are great techniques, and I think, this is one of the things that I think a lot of people that come from writing magazine articles or news or shorter things, there's this instinct to just sort of make a book, a bunch of articles, but that doesn't work, right? Because it
Guilty.
needs to
I'm
build.
guilty.
Yeah. Yeah, right, right. But I think, that's just natural. That's, of course, what you're gonna try first, and then you realize that's not working, and
Yeah.
there needs to be kind of this overarching arc, and it can be hard to find, but when you find it, you sort of know, "Aha, I've got it," right? Did
If
you
I were to
did you
ever
sort
write
of
another
know?
book, I would spend so much more time thinking of that would be my first thing to figure out. And it's interesting because,
Mhm.
you know, Chrissy, you and I know Brooke Burrell, like who has written Infested and like she's like the fact checkers guide, Chicago Guide to a Manual for Fact Checking. And I actually attended a talk of hers she did at NASW, so the National Association
Uh-huh.
of Science Writers, and it was kind of like how to do a book proposal. And she kind of really emphasized, this was years ago, this was like more than 10 years
Uh-huh.
ago. She emphasized this kind of structure thing as like a really important thing to figure out at the beginning. And the
Mhm.
thing is, kind of like what you say, I thought I had figured it out, but what I didn't,
Yeah.
you kind of don't understand it until you're like in the midst of it and it's not working. And then
Yeah.
you kind of figure out how it can work.
Oh, yeah.
Hence
That this is
emerging form.
exactly, exactly. Now this
Exactly.
is great fodder because, Betsy Mason and I are doing a talk on book proposals at this year's Science Writers, so
Oh, wow.
I'm gonna steal that. I'm gonna make sure that we talk about this subject. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, that's great.
So I'm curious, you were saying that even since the book, since you finished it, there's all this other evidence coming out and all these other stories you could have used. And what
Oh,
is
yeah.
that like? Like you see them and how do you let go of this project or have you let go of it yet?
It's it's hard, right? Because since I
Yeah.
put out the book, for example, when I wrote this book, it was thought that like 1 in 20 cases of autism was linked to spontaneous mutations in the embryo's development. So, like, not something inherited from mom or dad. And then more recently, it's like 20%. So, it's gone from like
Oh,
5% to 20%. So, like, that
Wow.
number's
Yeah.
shot up.
Mhm.
Of course, like, these numbers are in flux and there's debate around them, but just to see the
Yeah.
kind of creep up. Um, and also one that's close to me and just that like a lot of women I know that are affected by endometriosis, which is like these growths that are not
Oh,
cancerous but
yeah.
can be painful. And some estimates say it's like 1 in 10 women have this disease. So the growths affect often the reproductive tract, and there's surgeries to
Yeah.
um, remove them if they affect fertility. So even though they're not cancerous, it's thought that these spontaneous mutations might drive the rise of these cells in the body that kind of go
Uh-huh.
rogue and take over some of
mm,
these systems. And there's just been so many more papers since my book came out that like cement
Mm.
this idea. And I guess though it's funny because the book publicity is its own animal. And what I found is I'm
Alright.
like, okay, I'll make lemonade out of lemons. Like maybe I'll pitch a story about these things that I kind of feel like I understand.
Yeah.
right.
Um, but where's her book? Here it is. I don't know if you guys can see it. Pests is here. So Bethany Brookshire was
Oh,
kind of just
yeah,
like,
Bethany.
you gotta make peace with the idea that
Yeah.
it's never gonna be everything, right? So
I
I
think
do the
that's
same thing
such
with
a
my
great
cooking, by the way. Like I put a meal in front of you and I'm like, oh, maybe I could have like maybe it's a writer trait to just like
Yeah,
constantly be
right, yeah.
self-critical and think like what could I have done, but what could I have left out? What could I have added? Like,
Yeah,
this hummus
yeah,
could have used like a little bit more cumin. Like I'm so sorry if cost like people are like just eating it,
yeah.
they're like it's fine.
But I feel like I mean, your book is really about these big ideas, these new ideas, and sort of this new understanding, and I think it's totally fine that it continues to evolve, right? And you understand more, like, the basic ideas in your book are probably not gonna change a lot, or at
Right.
least
No,
not
I
in
don't
the
think
the
so.
short term here, so
I tried to future
it's like
proof it in that
yeah.
way. I mean, I
Yeah,
do
yeah.
think that I spoke with somebody who had written a book. I forget what it was about, but it came like too soon. And then
Mhm.
everybody was like writing about it like 5, 10 years later. So I do
Uh-huh.
think I got lucky because I had the idea in 2018, but then the pandemic happened and I got totally
Mhm.
swept up in like reporting on COVID. And
Yeah.
so it did give some time for the science to mature, and a lot happened in the pandemic years in the science. For example, like there's a study of like where there's that guy in the UK who's just getting FedEx packages of like giraffe guts, like guts of zoo animals that have died natural causes, like all over the world,
Uh-huh.
like monkeys and also cats and dogs. And like that all happened in the pandemic. And that study
Yeah.
showed that like
Yeah.
across the animal kingdom, they all end up with 3,200 mutations in their gut, no matter how long they live. So it's kind of tying the idea of longevity to mutation rate. So like the longest living animals mutate the slowest, the fastest, the
Uh-huh.
shortest, like the mice, they mutate pretty fast, but like we all end up with 3,200 mutations at the end of the day. So anyway,
Interesting.
Huh.
yeah.
The magic number.
So, I mean, there's so many surprising things in the book, but I'm curious about what surprised you about yourself as you were writing a book? What did you learn about yourself in this process?
I going back to the thinking thing, like I didn't know I
Mhm.
enjoyed thinking so much. Like I thought I enjoyed interviewing people and reading
Yeah,
research papers and the process of like finding the right
yeah.
verb in a sentence, which is really difficult but like important. I mean, especially when you're
Mhm.
writing about biology and genes,
Yeah.
like
Oh,
you've got to
yeah.
be careful that you don't there's word repeat in the genre that I write about is like really difficult.
Oh, that's
Um
so tricky, right? There's no
yeah.
synonyms for DNA.
Yeah, well, and also like even the word mutation. Like I didn't want to put
Yeah,
mutation in every
yeah,
sentence. And then you can't use the words they use. Like you can't say a gene was expressed, right? Like that's like I
right.
don't know if people can see, but like I'm putting my hands around my face like I'm voguing like
Yeah.
Madonna, because that's jargon, right? I just
Yeah,
gave
right.
the NIH about like let's not talk about even gene silencing. I think can be tricky because it's not like they're
Yeah.
making noise and not noise. So I'm so sorry, Rosemary. I like, think I
Yeah, the question was how were you surprised by your own
Oh yeah.
self? Like, what
So just that
surprised you about your
I
own process?
enjoyed like
Yeah.
thinking, but and I know coming on to this show, I wanted to kind of like mention this. It can also become difficult because I was like so what's hard for me is once I get into that thinking space, I can't let go of it. Like
Yeah.
it's
Right.
not just the shower, right? It's
Right.
like I find it hard to sleep.
Right.
I'm like
Uh-huh.
still
Yeah.
thinking about like what am I going to
Of
say? How am I
course.
going to do it? What do I need to figure out? How do I connect these dots? So
Yeah.
I like it, but like I do have to figure out a way to rein it in. It doesn't happen with
Yeah.
features. Like if I write a feature or a news story, like I'm
Mhm.
good. But with these bigger ideas, it's like they're kind of this ocean you can swim in, and
Mm.
sometimes
It
you
won't
get
let you
Yeah.
pulled in a
alone.
riptide, you know?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the thing about a book is it really requires this kind of obsession. I mean, it really is, and I think if you don't have the obsession, it's really hard to write the book because
Right, but
it's
if
almost
you're an
obligatory.
obsessive type like me, it's like
Yeah.
it's a
It
recipe
could be
for,
yeah, right.
even just social detachment. Like you're at a party and
Yeah.
you're like, so how do I bring in epigenetics into this whole thing? Like a lot of people are like, oh, you should
Right,
book about
yeah.
epigenetics. So someone will ask you
Yeah.
that at a party, and they're like, I've got to make clear that like it's not epigenetics. It's actually changes to the DNA sequence itself.
Right,
Do you
yeah.
guys ever find that like you're just kind of pulled into your own
Oh,
mind in a
yeah.
social setting,
Yeah.
figuring out a
Yeah.
writing thing, and then you kind of have to come back and be like, oh yeah, this dip is like so delicious.
Well, especially if somebody is talking about something that's going to tie into your book, and then you get all excited about it, and
Right, right.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, no, absolutely, and that even happens to me with features sometimes. I just, filed one recently, and it was just like I was hanging out with friends during the last little bit when I was finishing it up, and I just found myself thinking, "Oh, yeah, I'm thinking about the like, oh, I need to come back to the party," like my head's elsewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and it is, but I think, that's part of the joy of it, right? Is that it is something you're so fascinated with, and it's like there is a delight in being occupied in that way, right?
Yeah. I mean, I might have once or twice like sent myself like a covert voice memo, like hanging out with friends, to be like, okay, chapter 3 and chapter 4, and be like,
Uh-huh.
God
What
bless
Yeah.
what
technology.
what challenged you? What was something really difficult that you at some point in every book, and maybe even multiple points, you think, "Oh my gosh, I just can't go on." What
Yeah.
happened for
So what
you with that?
the main challenge with this book, and perhaps every aspect of my writing, is that like I really do go for the big idea. Like I'm like really like hungry for like something that will just like change the way people think and like really like challenge people. Um, I don't really go for shock value, but sometimes the things I
Yeah.
say shock people. Like I have a chapter about how vaccines mutate your DNA because getting sick
Uh-huh.
also mutates your DNA, right? Like,
Right.
um,
Yeah.
and that's people are like, oh, did you really come out and say that? I'm like, yeah, I did. So I think what challenges me is I go for these big ideas, but then finding one person to carry the whole story is impossible because there's
Yeah.
not one
Yeah.
person that has lived from 1881 until
Right.
2026 that I know of,
Yeah.
right? And that's how long this story took. Like it's been
Mhm.
don't make me do math, but like 150-ish years, right? That this
Mhm.
idea of
Yeah.
cells in the body competing against each other. Sorry, my nose. Speaking of getting sick, I've got like the allergy and like post cold combo here,
Oh,
so I apologize for the congestion. So I would love to be able to be the kind of writer who finds one person and just like lives through them in a story, like because that's
mhm.
a great read as well. But I
Yeah.
think my agent, to some extent, my editor too, were like, look, like every book is different, and this book is more.
Yeah.
My hairdresser says it looks like a party invitation,
Oh, I
and
It
I
love
think
it.
does,
It
actually.
I
does.
think
Could
that
be
I'm a
confetti.
party
Yeah.
person. I like to have people
Yeah.
over. I'm not going to
Huh.
mention dip a third time because I already mentioned hummus and dip. So like let's just say chips and guac. I don't know if that's, but I
Yeah.
like to have
Yeah.
people over, and I think I kind of just like I do the same thing in the book. Like I just invite people
Yeah.
from different decades to like tell their stories, and literally like I talked to somebody who did some discoveries in the 1970s and some in the
Mhm.
1990s and like some last year or not last year but like 2 years ago. So
Mhm.
I think one thing that people don't talk about enough is how much our writing reflects our personalities. Like, don't you ever
Yeah.
feel you read something and you're like, oh, that's a person I would hang out with because they seem to be like this. And I think it's both in structure and in language. And so I feel like if you read this book, you probably figure out that I'm like, oh, she likes to throw a party because like she's
Yeah.
inviting all these people.
This is such a great metaphor for how certain books can be written, as if you were the hostess and you're inviting all these people that
Yeah.
you're
Yeah,
interviewing and all these different ideas, and you're inviting them all to a party and getting them all to talk to each other, and figuring out what is it gonna take to make them all say what you most need
Yeah.
them to say, and
Mhm.
that's really fun. I love this
well,
metaphor.
I was once having a conversation. It might have actually been at a party, but I was talking to somebody about like writers and their different types. Like somebody was like, and I don't know where this came from, so I apologize if it's like a famous question or something. But it's like if
Yeah.
you go to a bar, are you the kind of person or the kind of writer that like talks to everyone in the bar, or do you sit down with somebody and get their whole life story? And
Uh-huh.
I'm not sure I
Yeah.
really know the answer to that question. Um,
Mhm.
so I'm probably the person to like ask everyone for their life story.
Oh my god. All right,
But
Christy, how about
do
you?
you guys know what you would do in
I
that situation?
I I think I like to have a really great conversation with one person and learn a lot from them rather than like, I'd rather go, like, one and deep than very small talk with everyone.
And do you think
I
that
I would
reflects in
be
your
in the
writing?
corner.
You mean the corner? Do you guys think
Am
that
I
that is
writing?
also in
That's a
your
good
writing?
question. Probably. I mean, I do tend to lose myself and stuff, and like you were saying, earlier this idea about thinking, I mean, to me, that's part of the joy, and
Yeah,
it's part of the reason I love reporting because it facilitates that thinking, and it's sort of like engaging with ideas. To me, that's the magic. That's what draws me to it. I don't actually love the writing process. I love the thinking process and figuring it all out. Yeah.
yeah.
And I think poems are basically like going and sitting in a corner with one person.
That's
I
true.
agree. I
Hanging
That's
agree.
out with
true.
them. So I'm thinking too about something you said. If you were going to do another book, you would do more thinking first before. But
Absolutely.
what are other things that you think, well, if I did another book, I would, what did you learn from this book that you would take
Would
forward
I
into the
download
next?
like 3,000 research articles or more? I don't know.
It's a hard habit to break, isn't it?
It is. It is. I went down a lot of historical rabbit holes. Like, I knew it was bad when I was like desperately seeking. There were a couple of like deep rabbit holes in this book. One is I found, gosh, I don't know where the, I don't have a printout of it, I think, but like I found myself looking and finding Der schwarze Urine or whatever. Like I can't say
Uh,
urine in German, but it was like a book written many decades ago about dark urine in German,
uh,
to find a German translation of a Latin recounting of like a centuries old like example of a council person. And of course, like I spent like hours trying to figure out, was this person like a mayor or like a leader of
right?
like the city in like Prussia that was
Uh-huh.
like changed names 7 times, because I wanted to find the first instance of what is now known as paroxysmal nocturnal hemoglobinuria, so PNH. It's this like blood disorder where essentially your blood cells start like they're mutant cells, they grow in large numbers, and then your system kind of crashes because it starts attacking
Mhm.
itself. And it's like it leads to these bouts of dark urine at night because your red blood cells are being kind of like destroyed, and all that
Hmm.
hemoglobin's going um to your urine, to your system. Um did I benefit from spending hours of my life looking into Die schwarze Urine or whatever, like like the dark, I don't know, just again, apologies if I'm messing up the German. No, because it ended up being like half a sentence in the book.
Yeah.
Similarly, and maybe this is like a better ending, but there was a quote in a piece, a research article about Wilhelm Rue, and he's this guy that I kind of uncovered in the process of writing this book, who was the disciple, like a disciple of Darwin, who was writing in German about how he believed that cells are really individual in the body and kind of follow the laws of natural selection. And so he wrote this in
Hmm.
1881 after Darwin had written on the origin of species, and like sent it to Darwin, and Darwin was like, oh, I like this idea, but I can't read German so well, so I'll pass it on to a friend. But like this guy's writing has just been translated in the course of when I was writing the book. Like people are just
Oh, wow.
rediscovering
Interesting.
how important it is to
Mhm.
this dialogue about diversity in the human body amongst ourselves. But there was a quote in one of these papers, and it was a Nietzsche quote. So Friedrich Nietzsche,
Mhm.
or I hope I'm saying his name right, um, had said he was also a fan of Wilhelm Rue. Okay, like maybe he understood the
Mhm.
German better, so like he was more on board. And in fact, it's thought that some of Nietzsche's like writing was like informed by Rue. Um,
Interesting, huh?
but he had this quote, and it was "Uniformity is delirium," or "Uniformity is pure delirium." I again
Oh,
don't quote me
I
on it.
was just reading that actually. I was looking over your book again before this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's the quote for let me just see if I can find it here. Yeah, here it is on page 29. Uniformity is pure delirium. So it's a pretty, like, how many words is that? 4 words. Do you know how many hours I looked and spent trying to source the primary source for those 4 words? Like days. I'm not joking. Days. Like I was like, I cannot pay my mortgage with this kind of obsession. And when I found it, so I spoke to like 3 different friends that connected me with like a Nietzsche scholar, or like a, and then they were having trouble. And so, and I kind of lost contact with them. I was sitting in a co-working space. This must have been in the fall, or maybe the summer. And, um, I went so desperate that I contacted this, like, those websites that look like they were static from like 2002, like the formatting and the color is all like, it's like navy background with like block white letters. And like, so it's called the Nietzsche channel. And I contacted them, and the guy because you have to understand, like I was going to like French translations of German translations. Nietzsche's writings are not always like in a book form. They're kind of like just collections of things sometimes. And so I just wanted to find where he said it so I could cite it. And then finally, this Nietzsche channel guy explained it to me and like pointed me in the right direction. And it was a place that I'd found before, but I wasn't certain about it. And I literally jumped up and I was like, I found it. And everyone turned to me in this co-working space. They're like, and they're all coders. They're like tech people. And I'm like, I found where the Nietzsche quote was from. And they're like, get a job, Like, find something
Oh,
meaningful
but
with
the
your life.
thrill. I
I
just
was so
had a total
happy.
contact high with you. That was amazing. I'm glad it
Sorry for
was
that
your,
long story.
many
You can
hours.
just
But that's what it's like. We go through these super long ways of getting, getting this piece, this one little piece, and look how it served you too. So, Roxanne, thank you so much for joining us. We're so glad that you were with us. And for people who are paid subscribers, you're going to get to listen to a bonus episode with Roxanne. And if you would like to become a paid subscriber, please join us at emergingform.substack.com. Thank you, Roxanne.
I love this conversation. I'm happy to continue talking. I love this.
If you like our show, visit us at emergingform.substack.com, where you can find more, including show notes and back episodes.
There, you can also sign up for our bi-weekly newsletter or become a paid subscriber, which gets you bonus episodes every other week.
That's emergingform.substack.com.
You've been listening to Emerging Form. This is Rosemary Watola-Tromer, and my co-host is science writer Christy Ashwanden. Our fabulous audio producer is Cherie Turner, and our music is created and performed by Kira Kopostansky and edited by Leah Shaw. Kate LaRue designed our logo, and Jack Mueller, of course, inspired our work and the name of this podcast. As he always said, you must obey the poem's emerging form. Until next time.